In recent decades, grassroots movements and initiatives in European cities and cities all over the world, particularly gardening movements, local food security initiatives, and small community-scale cooperatives, have emerged, finding fertile ground for the development of relevant activities, for various socio-economic and historical reasons. Grassroots initiatives have begun to reclaim public space, as well as the right to produce local food, and create various opportunities not just for economic reasons, but also for local cooperation on food security, or beautification of an area, integration of vulnerable groups, social solidarity and support towards community members, as well as for addressing health issues in a community. Flowers, vegetables, fruits, greens, and herbs are cultivated as an initiative of a local community, in smaller or larger city spaces, in Europe and worldwide, in abandoned lands and infrastructure, neglected brownfields, vacant lots, small gardens, backyards, roofs, unused spaces, even in apartment buildings, giving the chance to members of local initiatives and urban inhabitants to produce their own food, create interactive and engaging spaces for social action, offering a colorful everyday experience to neighborhoods and communities. Urban farming and gardening community initiatives have grown in the last 2 decades, and consist of spontaneous, subversive, and sometimes contrary to neoliberal trends in city planning and food production strategies, grassroots movement. However, examples of good practices and community-based urban gardens and similar urban farming projects can be found all over Europe, in close cooperation with local authorities and NGOs, receiving support in terms of funds, special leases, and permits, volunteers or organizational and educational resources. But what are these promising and diverse urban farming grassroots initiatives, and how can we define them? There are several definitions of urban farming community initiatives in modern literature, provided by international organizations, urban farming organizations, development experts, as well as political scientists and sociologists. Despite the diversity of the reasons that these initiatives emerge, very few contradictions can be found between these definitions, mainly in terms of approaches. UN describes these types of initiatives as groups or organizations which are primarily made up of civilians, advocating a cause to spur change at local, national, or international levels. Grassroots initiatives are community-based approaches, created to address localized problems. On the same track, FAO describes grassroots initiatives as groups of people from the same or different communities, belonging to civil society, forming organizations, groups, and initiatives or movements, and taking action due to the government's inability to deliver input, credit, and services to land reform beneficiaries, or implement strategies and measures that please, or cover the needs of a vulnerable community, or a community which hosts vulnerable groups. Other urban food farming or food security experts define community initiatives as groups of people trying to create solutions to challenges as they see them, adhering to criteria that diverge from mainstream institutions, and practically expressing core social values. Some give a deeper insight to the organizational structure of the community initiatives, highlighting that they include any type of collaborative social undertaking that is organized at the local community level, and has a high degree of participatory decision-making, and flat hierarchies. Others underline the fact that initiatives generally engage the voluntary contribution of time and resources of the organization's members to achieve a particular shared cause. Often, experts highlight that community and grassroots initiatives challenge the status quo, and the decisions or strategic plans of a local government, or a state's government, in urban planning, in agricultural planning and food production, and promote new forms of organizing in terms of social and economic life, as alternative systems. These alternative systems could be local food systems, or economic support to the poorest, or even integration of vulnerable groups. Other scientists underline that urban farming grassroots initiatives tend to contest neoliberal urban planning strategies, food governance structures, and the global geographies of power and resource distribution in many cases. However, not all urban farming grassroots initiatives form social movements, or identify themselves as such, nor do they always cooperate with larger social movements, or challenge the authorities. There are numerous examples of community initiatives cooperating with other formal civil society organizations, such as NGOs, while some communities reach agreements and receive help from local authorities and educational institutions, such as schools, universities, as well as local market and business councils. Nevertheless, all urban farming grassroots initiatives tend to involve collective action in civil society, and aim to transform a community to a sustainable state, for the good of the community. Either they create links and cooperation or not with broader social movements. In conclusion, by combining the similar definitions and approaches, we can define urban farming grassroots initiatives as groups of people, belonging in a community or in different communities, forming organizations, collectives, non-governmental organizations, and any type of collaborative social action in order to create solutions to challenges that are linked with urban farming. Such solutions could be local food production, economic support to the poorest, or integration of vulnerable groups, by creating a variety of urban farming projects that involve collective action, participation, voluntary work, horizontal decision-making, aiming to achieve a certain goal or a group of goals for the improvement of their community in various fields. These fields could include economy, food production, social solidarity, educational processes, health issues, leisure, or reconnection with nature. Urban farming community initiatives, whether in the form of smaller or bigger projects, create places where people reconnect with nature, produce their own food, and promote alternative social models. These initiatives often promote social and intercultural dialogue, third-age active involvement, youth engagement, and civic engagement, as well as vulnerable groups' social integration. Despite the fact that urban farming community initiatives differ from place to place, and tend to adjust to each city's and country's socio-economic, cultural, and historic backgrounds, there are some common characteristics between them. The social and collective character of such initiatives is one of their main features. Initiatives involve collective action, collective planning, decision-making, voluntary work, and the common use of human, organizational, communicational, and financial resources, by a group of people with common causes and goals. It is a common practice that the community involved is in control of both the process and outcomes of an urban farming project. Moreover, such initiatives can act as incubators of social change, through their social action, motives, and goals, helping people to access the tools for building alternatives that improve the chances and quality of life of the local residents. Urban farming grassroots initiatives tend to be problem-solving and goal-oriented. The majority of these initiatives tend to form in order to address social, financial, or spatial problems, and a large variety of challenges that a community faces due to the socio-economic background of a city, or due to the urban development plans and strategies implemented by local authorities, affecting the people's everyday life. Moreover, urban farming grassroots initiatives tend to form and act towards one or more goals, no matter if these are particular and clearly defined or more ambiguous and general. For instance, there are examples of initiatives with specific, clearly defined, and countable goals, such as the production of food for people in the community. On the other hand, there are examples of initiatives with more ambiguous and general goals, which are difficult to be recorded and counted, such as the improvement of the health of the community, or the change of lifestyle, or the reconnection with nature, etc. However, in both cases, people act in the social sphere, form collectives, organize themselves, become volunteers, interact with each other, evaluate their methods and results, and act collectively towards succeeding goals, selected by the community for the community. These initiatives tend to be inclusive, diverse, and involve citizens with different economic, educational, and cultural backgrounds, and have multidimensional organizational characteristics based on the socio-economic, historical and cultural background of the city or country in which they emerge. It is common ground that grassroots initiatives, such as community gardens, urban farms, green roof projects, or small-scale collectives, producing food and addressing the local needs or the local market's needs, involve the voluntary work, commitment, financial and organizational resources of diverse people and groups, in terms of culture, social backgrounds and education. Nevertheless, the people or groups involved are characterized by common core values, common goals, and motives, as well as similar ideological frameworks in the context of social change. In addition, community initiatives tend to have a high degree of participatory decision-making. However, flat hierarchies are not always the case, especially in examples of communities cooperating with other local stakeholders such as local NGOs, institutes, or the local authorities. Urban farming grassroots initiatives are driven by ideological commitment, rather than profit-seeking. Their motives and their developed projects tend to be based on values and culture, different from traditional or innovative enterprises. In addition, community initiatives tend to involve more communal ownership structures, and operate in the social economy, relying on voluntary labor, grants, or mutual exchange, contrary to the conventional market-based enterprises. Grassroots and community initiatives on urban farming emerge in European cities, and cities worldwide, for a variety of socio-economic reasons. Material and economic necessity, as well as social challenges ignored by the traditional state and market institutions, can encourage grassroots groups to promote and coordinate actions that address these needs and issues. There are various reasons behind the emergence of modern community urban farming initiatives. Every region and country has its own context, and the communities approach their projects from their own concerns. Modern community urban farming projects began in New York, during the oil and financial crisis of the 1970s, with the creation of urban gardening projects, by a group of artists and activists called Green Guerrillas. Their projects and actions were related to human well-being, community building, and improvement of everyday living. Now let's take a look at the following video, describing how radical gardeners took back New York City in the 1970s. The environmental movement, as well as the environmentalist and landscape associations, played an important role in the emergence of grassroots urban farming projects in Italy and Germany during the 80s and the 90s. Financial crises and social movements also played an important role in the creation of grassroots urban gardening projects in Spain, Greece, and Italy after the new millennium, offering mutual solidarity and opposing economic and political elites. Nowadays, there is a direct link between the financial crisis, communities' urban farming initiatives, and food access. Factors such as economic decline, unemployment, social inequalities and decline of public urban space are directly linked to the creation of many and diverse community initiatives and networks on urban agriculture. In southern Europe, austerity, financial and employment crisis in large cities, as well as the difficulties local authorities face towards maintaining public spaces, or towards developing facilities and covering the needs of citizens and vulnerable groups, resulted in the creation of community gardens in occupied public land. It is a common pattern that these initiatives describe themselves as groups of citizens who want to actively participate in public space planning and management, struggling against the privatization of public goods and services. In addition, community initiatives on urban farming are also used as testing and learning spaces, linked to alternative employment ideas, and local food networks. In terms of food production and food insecurity, community initiatives on urban farming can be seen as a direct response towards the socio-economic phenomenon of food deserts, namely areas where people have limited access to a variety of healthful foods, either due to low income, marginalization of populations and neighborhoods, lack of access to fresh vegetables and fruits, poor physical access to supermarkets, as well as lack of fresh vegetables in markets, and difficulties in transportation. Last but not least, urban farming projects created by communities are also created for social integration and financial solidarity towards vulnerable groups, as well as for educational reasons, bringing schools directly in the practice field of urban farming. Overall, urban farming grassroots initiatives can be seen as a response to recent urban social, economic, and political crises, and simultaneously as an expression of green activism in different cities and areas with diverse socio-economic contexts.